Hey, wavy curlies. So I want to talk a little bit about an introduction to the topic of protein. Everybody's hair needs protein to greater or lesser degrees because our hair is made up mostly of protein. And so it's basically this protein moisture balance that we really need to pay attention to, especially as curlies. We know curly hair needs moisture more than straight hair. And if you've transitioned over into a curly girl friendly type of way of taking care of your hair, you're probably giving it a lot more moisture than you used to, which means now you're starting to need to think about protein, or you've heard the word protein, whereas before you never really knew much about protein or moisture. You may never have done a deep conditioning treatment, or very rarely, and it didn't ever seem to make a difference. Your hair didn't necessarily need one or the other, according to what you knew back then. So what happens is a lot of times when we start giving our hair a lot of moisture, we throw that balance, that homeostasis between moisture and protein off. Some people have such natural amounts of protein in their hair that they really don't need to add much, hardly ever. And there are other people whose hair loves protein and can take it all the time. But of course, those are the ends of the spectrum. And there are people who fall all the way, through the middle of that spectrum as well. So I tend to be on the end of the spectrum where my hair loves protein. And that has to do with a couple things. My hair is fine. So a lot of times fine hair really responds well to protein because it gives it strength. It kind of internally shores up the structure of the hair and actually can help it support its own weight, which will allow it to then show the curl pattern better. Otherwise, it can get elongated because it's not strong enough to support the curl pattern that it really has the potential to have. The other reason my hair likes protein is that it's colored, so there's damage to it. If you're coming off of keratin treatments, which are kind of tricky in name, yes, this is the name keratin, which is a protein, but they're damaging to the hair. So if you are changing the structure of your hair through really hot flat irons, through chemicals like perms and coloring and things like that, then there's a good chance your hair needs some protein. Now, how long is it going to need protein? Is it indefinitely going to like a lot of protein, or is it just in this rescue mode? Since my hair is constantly being colored, even though I try not to do much to the ends, it always needs it. So protein can be found in your products with the name protein, obviously, but there's a lot of other words that go along with it that are helpful to understand. So protein in its regular form, like you would find it in food. We understand protein when we think of carbohydrates and proteins and fats when it comes to food. Those type of protein molecules are generally too big to absorb well into the hair. So there's a couple processes that they can do to the proteins to make them more accessible to your hair. One is hydrolyzing the protein. So if you see the word, let's say, hydrolyzed rice protein, then you know that that protein has been modified to be made smaller. So now it's more accessible and absorbable by your hair. That's good. So hydrolyzed proteins are great. Proteins are made up of amino acids. So if you see the word amino acid, it's just like a smaller piece of protein, and that is a protein for you. So it could be rice amino acids. Again, we're in the protein family there. There are a lot of different types of proteins too. So I've just said rice. There's oat and wheat and silk and keratin and quinoa and vegetable protein. There's others I'm sure I'm going to forget. So look for the word protein, look for the word hydrolyzed, look for the word amino acids. Those will all get you in the ballpark of protein. And if you want it to be most absorbable, have it be hydrolyzed or amino acids. Some of the proteins create more rigidity or structure than others, and I believe wheat and oat do that more than, let's say, silk. So you may find that your hair likes silk because it's just gentle, but wheat is too much and makes your hair feel rigid or stiff. And that's one of the signs of when you have too much protein. Your hair will feel rough, dry, tangly, breaking. You'll see little maybe shreds of hair and not full hairs that are falling out, but little bits that are breaking. It can be real tangly. those are things that happen when we have too much protein. So look at your products that you're using. Perhaps you have protein in too many things on a regular basis. And if you swap something out, let's say you swap out your leave-in conditioner for one with protein to one without, and use the other things that are in your lineup, that one swap may be just enough. Maybe it's not. Maybe you need to swap a couple things out for an alternative that doesn't have protein or has a different type of protein or has protein lower on the ingredient list. Remember, anything in the top 5 ingredients in your products is going to be very dominant. So look for it potentially lower down than that. People say, how do I know if my hair needs protein? Well, there's a couple things to look for, but the best thing to do is try. But what you can look for is if your curls are starting to look weak and limp and elongated and maybe fuzzy and they're just not holding their shape, look at what you've been doing. Have you been really moisturizing? If you have, you maybe threw it off a little bit, that homeostasis, and you need to add a little bit of protein back into your regimen. It could be that your hair is also just gone through something. Maybe there's been a change in your products, or you got it cut, or you've been growing it. Like, all different things can affect your hair. So maybe your hair loved protein and you got a lot of it cut off. Well, that damaged part that loved the protein is gone. So maybe the rest of what's left doesn't need as much. It's much healthier. So maybe that was, you know, the old set of products working for the long hair, and now the shorter hair needs something else. Maybe you grew out your highlights and you're not highlighting anymore, so maybe you don't need as much protein because there's less damage to your hair. Just look at your products, look for the words we've talked about, and if you feel like your hair is starting to get dry, rough, tangly, or brittle, back off or substitute something else. If you feel like you've been moisturizing like crazy and your hair is now starting to look limp and long and your curls are not popping like you once had them do, then add some protein in. Either way, throwing it off with too much protein or too much moisture can be rectified by adding the other in. So if you are over proteined, then pull out the protein from your regimen and do some deep conditioning. Maybe even do a clarify and a deep conditioning, because when you use protein topically on your hair, yes, some of it can go under the cuticles and get in, but it's not a permanent effect. Think of it as like temporary hair color. It like starts to wash off. It starts to pull out of the hair. So keep that in mind. And you'll need to find your regimen. You may find that in the winter you need lots of moisture, but in the summer you tend to need a little bit more protein because too much moisture, you know, maybe makes you frizz. You really have to just start paying attention and even taking notes for your own hair. And when you have good results, think about the next time you use that same regimen. Did you have good results? What about the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th? If the results are diminishing returns, then your hair is telling you maybe not every time, or maybe I don't need that twice a month protein treatment. Maybe I'm good with once a month, right? Just keep an eye on how things are reacting. That's my best recommendation. And I recently saw somebody's video that was really helpful, and she said if your hair feels like it's going to break in the shower, then you need protein. But if your hair it feels like it's going to break when it's dry, then you need moisture. And that's a great way to look at it too. That could be helpful for many people. So don't be afraid to try protein, but listen to your hair. You need to find out your rhythm. My rhythm is protein and products every single wash day. Yours may be, you know, a protein or 2 protein type products every other wash, or 2 is your max and they have to be below the top 5 ingredients. You get how many variables there are to consider. It seems overwhelming, but I'm almost positive, unless you are trying to avoid protein, if you start looking at your products, you might have some protein already in some things. So if you switch to a new product and it was great at first and then all of a sudden it feels rough and dry and tangly, you needed a little hit of protein and that's all you needed, but you don't need it again the second wash. So your hair's telling you it doesn't love a lot of protein often. It just needs a little sometimes. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any other questions, and hopefully that answers some of the bigger questions that people have when they start to look into using protein. Don't be afraid, but listen. Do experiments. Do a regimen without protein, or do a regimen with protein, and kind of see how your hair acts and find your happy medium. Let me know how it goes, and if you like this and found it helpful, subscribe. Once you subscribe, if you want to know when there are new videos uploaded, just hit the bell that is next to the subscribe portion on the left side of the screen, and let me know your thoughts or questions, and hopefully this was helpful. I'll see you soon on another wavy curly video. Bye.